Restore America's Libraries. Oh, thank you for recording, Kelly. Um, the purpose of this training or our program is basically to provide capacity building opportunities for organizations, communities that have never really received funding before within the region. And one of the things that were identified is doing a training on match. And in particular for our grant, match is not required. But for other bigger federal grants and other funding opportunities, it usually is. And so folks kind of just identified having more knowledge, being a little bit more strategic on this. And so this is how it came to be. And so I will pass it on to Kelly and my team members to introduce themselves, and then we'll pass it on to Melba. If you have any questions, you can put it in the chat or hold at the end of the meeting, and then we'll be able to take Q&A. This will also be recorded and sent to you along with the slides. It'll be uploaded on our website. So if there's any colleagues that might have missed this training, feel free to kind of circulate with them as well. So I'll pass it on to Kelly.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelly Marty. I am the Program Associate for the Long Island Sound Community Impact Fund with Restore America's Estuaries, and I'm looking forward to helping you all in this training and just being assisting with this training and in the future. And I'll pass it on to Andrea.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Andrea Polly. I am the list gift grant administrator, so I work a lot with budgeting and the finance and administration side of the program. So excited for you guys to get this training today. And I will turn it over to Melba Mitchell, who is also located in Houston, as am I. Melba, I will let you introduce yourself and take over. And if you guys have any questions, you can put them in the chat and we will answer them at the end.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melba Mitchell. I'm a CPA, as Andrea said, located in Houston, Texas. I've been working with nonprofit grants and what have you for over 35 years now. I started with the state of Texas. I worked with them for about 5 years. I was an auditor, and I was the person that would go out and look at working papers and making sure things are documented properly. And for the last 30 years, I have been working in public accounting, specializing in grant management, grant financials. And I actually have a passion for this kind of work. Having been an auditor and have seen the kind of trouble that you can get into if you don't properly document what you're doing. I've kind of made it a mission to be able to help people to do that properly so that they don't have to have funds pulled or pay money back or just lose a grant because they didn't document things properly. So having that being said, today we are going to be focusing on match budget training. I know sometimes people think that match is not as important as the federal award itself, but it is. So hopefully I will be able to help you understand the importance and how to make sure that you are complying with all rules. So match budget training, essential requirements for compliance and success, a comprehensive training on match requirements, eligible sources, documentation standards, and reporting expectations. So today, our agenda is training purpose, overview of match requirements, eligible sources, documentation standards, and reporting expectations, objectives and outcomes, critical competencies, and practical skills you will gain to ensure grant compliance and audit readiness throughout the project. Match types and requirements. I mean, there are basically two types. There's in-kind and cash, and we have to make sure we keep them documented properly, make sure that we don't get in trouble with the audits. Common pitfalls and case studies. Ineligible match examples, real-world case studies, valuation standards, and reporting expectations to avoid compliance issues and audit findings. So first of all, training objectives. 5 critical competencies that you will gain today. Understanding match requirements. We need to know what's allowable, what's not. Can we use federal funds for match? Can we not? We need to make sure we know these things. Difference between eligible and ineligible match. Does the match fall within the work plan? Is it in the scope of our work? So we need to make sure if we use it as match, it's going to benefit the program that we are supporting. Apply match to project budgets. So when you're creating a budget, the budget is based on the work plan. The budget is not just something that you come up with to say, well, I might need this, I might need that. It needs to tie back to your work plan so that it knows it's going to benefit the program. So, and then identifying document standards. So we need to make sure that we have the correct documents. For instance, we need to make, if you have in-kind match, do we have a letter of intent? Do we have a letter that tells you, that evaluates how much the match is and where did you get it? Did you evaluate it on market value? Did you pull the number out the air? Where did you get the information to determine how much that match is worth? And then also we need to recognize compliance risk and consultant triggers, you know, like, is the match outside of the time period? Did it tie back to the work plan? So we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that match is not disallowed. It can be disallowed just the same as federal funds if we don't document it properly. Okay, so practical skills that you will apply immediately after this session. So these are things that you really need to get down, need to understand and work with so that we make sure we don't get in trouble, reduce the risk of disallowance. So classifying match contributions. So we need to make sure that the contributions fall within the work plan. They're good with the project, you know, so, and the costs are reasonable. We don't want to just make up some numbers and have something that doesn't make sense. I mean, it needs to be reasonable. If you went out and bought it, is that what you would pay? And make sure the numbers are not inflated, or also make sure they're not undervalued as well. We're going to develop a match budget. Budgets need to align with the work plan. And also when you're doing budgets, you need to make sure if you make a change in one area of the budget and it affects another area, you need to make sure that all that carries over and you don't, it doesn't make sense. It's not tying together. Things must tie. Supporting documentation. Again, we need to have good personnel records. We need to have timesheets. We need to have bank statements or what have you. If you have cash match showing that it came in, if we have a grant that is cash match, we need to have a grant agreement. We need to have our documents. And then we need to report it correctly. If it's in-kind match, it needs to be reported as in-kind. If it's cash, it needs to be recorded as cash. It needs to be in your general ledger or your supporting documentation or your financial statements. You need to make sure that we report correctly. Again, this is all to make sure that we don't get the match disallowed. So match definition and requirements, understanding the foundation of your non-federal share obligations. Okay. What is match? Non-federal share that is part of the total project. There's two kinds of match. There's in-kind. In-kind is someone donating, they might donate equipment. You have volunteer hours. They might let you use a facility that somehow supports your program. But it's not cash. It's just giving you goods or services. And we have to make sure that we use either fair market value or industry standards to evaluate that. Cash match, they're actually giving you cash. It might be in the form of a grant. It might be in the form of a corporate donation. It could be in the form of individuals just donating money to help your cause. It's a third party donation that are not federal funds. Why does match matter? Match is the same, is being held to the same standards as federal funding. You must document it the same way as federal funding. It must be approved. It must be in your scope. regardless of what kind of match you have, and if it's not in the scope and it doesn't meet the standards, it still doesn't count, regardless if it was a good idea and it enhanced your program. But if it's not in the scope, it doesn't count. There are 5 non-negotiable rules grantees must follow. Rule 1, match must be non-federal unless explicitly approved. Rule 2, must be necessary, reasonable, and applicable to the project. Rule 3, must be incurred during the approved budget period. Rule 4, cannot be double counted or used for another federal award. Rule 5, must be eligible by type, budget category, and work task. Also, there are like 3 core match categories: personnel, contractors, and supplies. Those are always really good areas to have your match in because those carry more weight. Those are the core match areas. Not that you can't use other ones, but you really need to try to have these core areas in your match. And I know sometimes with the personnel, volunteers sometimes are considered personnel match, sometimes they're considered other. So for this one, I use the Ray grant. In the Ray grant, they're considered other. But in some other ones, they're personnel. So you just have to know what your grantee, how they classify that. So, but these are the 3 core that you really need to focus on getting match in. Not that you can't use others, but try to at least have 2 of the 3 in there. Okay, eligible in-kind match by budget by category. So converting community support and professional contributions into document value. Eligible in-kind match, volunteer labor, converting community supports into documented value. And in this case, since I use the Ray, it is other. Now, when you have volunteers, one of the biggest problems with volunteers, when you use volunteers, is that what they're doing is not, does not meet the work program. So here you see I have it's the budget category is other. Then I'm telling you like plant native vegetation. And then the work program task is 3.2. So when it comes to volunteers, I have a schedule here. I think we should try to control the narrative to make sure that they are whatever they say they're doing, it ties back to the work program. So let me show you here for a moment. Stop sharing this for a moment. Okay, this is, can you see my screen? Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see
Yes.
it, Melba.
All right, so this is a volunteer timesheet. As you can see, it has the normal things that you would have for a volunteer timesheet, the name, the signature, worked hours. But I pre-populated this timesheet, this volunteer timesheet, to put the actual task that they are going to be helping us with today. So that way there's no guessing as to what this volunteer program, how they're helping us. That way you won't have to go back and trying to figure it out, or we know for sure that it ties back to our work program. So, and if you have someone come out to volunteer and they're like 3 or 4 different tasks that they're doing on the same day, then I would do a different volunteer timesheet for each task. So when they come, they can sign, date, put their hours in there so that there's no guessing as to what they did that day. Okay. Okay, can you see my screen again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so that's kind of the gist of the volunteers. Just make sure that they're describing what they're doing and it connects back to your work plan. Okay, so donated services, professional contributions. So again, you need to make sure, so in this case, the donated services is engineering services for restoration, design, or permitted support. That ties back to work program task 3.1. So you want to make sure that that's documented properly, and you want to have something like an acknowledgement letter that gives you the value of the equipment, what they're donating, or the time that they're donating, the dates of the service, because that's going to tie back to making sure it's within your grant timeline, and then the valuation based on fair market rates, and they need to give you some kind of letter, provide acknowledgement letter. And I also have a copy of that, if you want to look at that for later. But there's a letter that, let me see, maybe I'll just share that one too. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the letter of acknowledgement. Basically, it's telling you, what you're giving, the service that you're giving, how it's going to help the scope of work. And then it also will tell you the basis of the fair market value and, however much it's going to cost, and that it's, in compliance with 2 CFR, and it's signed, it will be signed. So it's just a letter of acknowledgement, but that's the tool. That's how you can confirm, verify the value of the engineering services. These are just documents. This is just how to document what you're doing. Okay. Eligible in-kind match, office space. This is a sticky one. This is
I don't think we
indirect
see.
call. Excuse
Sorry,
me.
Melba. Are you trying to share your screen right
Oh, I'm
now?
sorry. It didn't. Okay, sorry.
It's okay, you're good.
I have a problem getting it to share again. So, can you see it now?
No, I don't think so.
Everyone, yes, we will get the slides and the recording afterwards, but if you have any questions, again, please feel free to put them in the comments and we will answer them at the end.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it back on here.
I think Melba, if you want, and since Andrea
Hi.
also, Oh, perfect. Okay.
Sorry.
No worries. This is tricky
It's,
with Zoom. Yeah.
yeah, sometimes it does that. So,
We see it. We see it now. Yeah.
all right. Sorry about that. All right. Okay. So as I was saying, um, office space is considered, a lot of times it's going to be indirect costs. Using indirect costs as match is a tricky thing to do because of the valuation. An office space needs to show how it directly impacts the program. And sometimes that's not, it's most time office space is just general space. So I wouldn't use it. I just use it as as an example of indirect costs, but I would stay away from indirect costs if I could, because it's more difficult to evaluate it and to actually document it. So, and I know that's something a lot of time people get space donated, but I would be careful with office space. Okay, so eligible cash match by categories. So leverage and partner funding and direct financial contributions for project implementation. Okay, so cash match, personnel and supplies, direct financial contributions that support core activities. So a lot of times with cash match, that's going to come from, say you have a state grant. They might give you money to have personnel that's going to help your program, or foundations might give you money for personnel. Personnel is usually going to be cash match, not in-kind match. Because most of the time people are getting paid. If they're on your staff, they're getting paid. Usually you don't have volunteers that are doing high level work. So it's most of the time going to be cash match, and the fringe benefits associated with cash personnel match, like FICA, unemployment, maybe health insurance, that can be matched as well. Supplies, they can also be matched. Like sometimes some governments will give you, just like, if say for instance, with the rate, if you need trees or shrubbery or rocks or something, some governments will actually buy those for you and give it to you. So most of the time you're going to document that with an invoice. Sometimes they will buy it for you, give you the money, and then you go out and buy a bank deposit or some kind of agreement. Okay.
Melba, if you don't mind, we have two questions right now.
Sure.
The first one is, let me go back to it. When a grant has a $100,000 cap and it indicates a federal cost share of, I think she meant 50%, would you be matching to bring the total to 200,000? And Maggie, if you want to ask it, if I didn't ask it correctly, feel free to ask your question.
Okay. Is
Thank you. Yeah, it's such a basic question that it might be hard to understand.
okay.
But I've always wondered if you're writing a grant for whose budget is for $100,000 and it has a 50-50 match, does that mean that the federal share is $100,000 and you're raising another 100 so that you would in the end have 200K to spend on a project? Or does it mean that the federal share is only 50K?
Okay, so if it's a 50-50 match and not 50%, right? 50-50?
50-50, yeah.
Then it's 200,000. 100,000 is federal, 100,000 is match.
Okay, now I get it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and thank you, Maggie. And I think the next question is yours as well. What about meeting space or outdoor access through other organizations or businesses? Can that be counted as match?
It can be counted as match if it has to directly impact the work program. Meeting space sounds like that's administrative. I mean, if you're meeting, unless you're the space is used, I don't
Or
know, to
community
plan.
engagement. Yeah, for
Yes.
community outreach.
Yeah. So if you need to plan it, yes, but if it's just space for administrative, no. But if it's for like a planning, where you're gonna come plan, everybody meets together to plan, I guess, a volunteer event where they can go out and clean up the estuary or something, then yes. But if it's just for office, no.
So I guess it makes sense then that if you're having a community gathering in a meeting space that's donated, you could count it then because it'd be directly related to the project.
And you're, yes, and you're
Okay,
planning, or I'm not as familiar with the estuary grants, but if it ties back to your work plan, then
got
yes.
it. Thank you, Melba.
Uh-huh.
It's really helpful, Melba.
Okay. Okay. All right. So when you have cash match, you either, you can support it by bank statements, grants, financial statements, um, anything that shows that you received the money and then show how you spent the money. So that's for cash match. Okay. Um, Contract services, the same thing goes for contract services. It must support the approved plan. You must document where, that you got the money or that you have an agreement to get the money. And that could be from anywhere from a grant agreement again, a letter of acknowledgement, anything that shows that you gotten the money, and it must again tie back to the work plan. I'm going to keep saying that over and over again because match, even though people will, sometimes people, just because you're a nonprofit or so, they'll donate you about, like say a lot of laptops. Well, you may not be able to use that as cash match or as in-kind match because if the laptops are not used in some way to help the program, and ties again back to the work plan, it's great you got the laptops, but if they don't help the program, then it's just not, it can't be used as match.
Melba, I'm
Ineligible.
sorry. I have a
Okay.
quick question on the contractual because this came up in another funding stream. If an organization wants to use contractual costs for match,
Mhm.
if it's a federal cost, then and it exceeds that simple the $10,000 threshold, um, we would have to do some sort of procurement. Do you have to do procurement for if it's match? Or would just a letter of intent or a contract showing the amount that the contractor is contributing suffice for
So
match?
if it's match, no, because they're donating services. You're not per se soliciting to pay them. They're donating service. So when you can get, if someone's willing to give you their time and they have the expertise to help your program, then I don't know how you would procure match services where you're soliciting, most time you have to get three bids
Hmm.
to match your program. There's not a lot of people out there just
No, it
I
makes
mean,
sense, but it was a question, it was a valid question if you think about treating match the same as you treat
yeah,
your federal funds. So I thought I'd bring it up. Thank you.
okay, okay. Um, an eligible match and common pitfalls, learning from real world case studies to avoid disallowance and audit findings. Okay, so Um, this is common the pitfalls that lead to disallowing audit findings. So let's go with this one. Uh, so one of it is when you EPA funds used without approval. Um, Use of funds for activities that don't they're not in your work program or the scope of your grant. It's going to be disallowed. So if your grant says that you're supposed to use all the funds to plant shrubbery, and you go and use the funds to, I don't know, clean the ocean. You did a good thing, but it's not in the scope of what you said you were going to do. So it'll probably be disallowed. Pre-award cost, unless the grant specifically says it, if you have costs that you've incurred before you apply for this grant, you can't use them. You can't charge them to this grant. You can't use that match cost because it's not in the award period. It has to be within the award period. Otherwise, you cannot use it. Unsupported estimates. So if you had, let's say you had volunteers come out and they planted shrubbery, and we're going to say that match was $100,000. It doesn't really make sense. So, and you don't have anything to show where you came up with that number. It's going to be disallowed. And where you came up with the number and how you got to that number. You need to do show the math. You have to have proper documentation, but it needs to make sense. Again, activities outside the approved work plan. I know with the estuaries, when the grants are given, it's for a certain area. Even though you might have done the same work, if it was for New York and you did the same work in Houston for whatever reason, it's in the Houston and it's for New York, the Houston area work that you did is going to be disallowed. You have to stay within the scope of the grant. Basically comes down, if match is not documented, it won't be counted. Okay, so these are some case studies that we have. So ineligible match case study, why activities outside approved work plans are never allowable. So what happened? A grantee counted outreach activities not included in the approved work plan as in-kind match. Review outcome, the activities were determined to be outside the approved scope and therefore not allowable as match. The impact, was match disallowed? The impact, match was disallowed and budgeted and reports required revision. So sometimes the grantee, if you have match and it's not in the scope or what have you, but it could be in the scope, sometimes they will allow you to amend the grant, the scope, and amend the budget so that will be counted, but don't count on that. So try to make sure whatever you get is in the scope. You can do budget amendments, but if you going into it and know that match is not in the scope or in the budget, then you need to reach out to your grants manager and ask, can the budget be amended? Can the scope be amended to incorporate this match that would be beneficial to the program? But don't just do it if you know for sure it's not in the scope. Try to get it amended so that you can use that. Here's another. So indirect costs, again, indirect cost calculations. So understand how to apply your rate correctly to maximize allowable match. So indirect costs, sometimes, I mean, basically I would think indirect cost is going to be 10, 15% of your federal amount. But that's not how indirect cost is calculated most of the time. Most of the time, you're going to have a modified direct cost total. And what that is there's some items that are not used to calculate indirect costs. For instance, if you buy equipment, you have to take that out. You have to back it out of your total cost. Capital expenditures, charges for patient care, tuition remissions, participant support costs. Those are things that are not going to be included in your indirect cost. So once you determine your modified total direct cost, and that means is if I have a grant that says it's $400,000 in federal, and then I have equipment that's $10,000. I need to take that equipment out of my total. So then now my total federal amount will be 3,900. And then I would take that number and multiply it by my indirect cost rate. So that's something that you really need to look in the RFP and make sure you understand how that's done. And I would actually set up a calculation to make sure and pull out whatever needs to be pulled out to make sure that I'm not including an amount in there that I shouldn't be included, and then therefore my indirect cost amount will be wrong. So once you determine what your modified total direct cost rate is, now you got to determine what indirect cost rate am I going to use. If you have a negotiated indirect cost rate agreement, you must use that. That's the rate that you're going to use. You negotiated with whatever federal agency you negotiated with it. You have to use it across all federal agencies. If you don't have one, then you can use the de minimis rate. As of October, the de minimis rate was increased to 15%, but the grantee will tell you if you can use the 15% or they want you to stick to the 10% or the 5%. That they have the ability to make that call. So indirect costs, you need to make first, number one, make sure you're using the right total federal funds. Number two, make sure you're using the correct rate to determine your indirect cost. And I have a budget tool that I'll be using in a few minutes to kind of try to help you understand some of that. Valuation standards and documents requirements. Ensure match is audit ready and defensible. Again, make sure you're using fair market value rates if it's professional services. Make sure if it's donated goods, we're going to use the fair market replacement cost. For volunteers, what are the industry standards for the hours that they're putting in? What is the hourly rate for those people? Make sure that you have receipts, that your financial statements line up with the budgets, that that whatever you put in the financial statement is accurate. And we need to make sure that we have like letters of intent, foundation letters, grants. Make sure you have all that information readily available if an auditor should ask. So, so I'm going to show you a budget that I created for this here. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so I know this looks a little bit much. This is a budget that it has our budget categories. This is my work plan. This is what it ties to. This is the cost basis. This is how I came up with these numbers. This is the federal amount. This is the non-federal amount. This is the type of match that it is. Who gave me the match, and this is the type of documentation that I'm going to have to show you that this is that the partner has given me this money either in kind or cash. So I know with the Ray grant that initially you'll send in, I guess, a preliminary application with mainly, I think they only have to have the letter of intent or what have you. And then you get invited to do a full proposal. My thought process on that is, even though there's a preliminary phase, I would approach it from day one as if I'm going to get invited. I would try to get as much information as I could, as many match contributors as possible, as many letters of commitment, and as well as I would get letters of commitment, funding letters, letter of intent, and try to get any other like grants from the state or local community, I would approach it as if I'm going to get asked to submit the full proposal and be ready, have things together so that even if you send in the preliminary information, you're going to have information, you're going to already have what you need. And that you can ask any questions and your proposal will look like you're ready. You know what you're doing. And I think that has an impression on people. And also another thing about match is don't overdo it. If they ask you for 150,000, give them 150,000, maybe 1,000 more, maybe, but it doesn't help you to give them 200,000, 250,000. Just give them what they ask for because there's no reason to exceed it. It doesn't help you in any way. So for instance, in this budget, whenever I put the numbers in here, it automatically tells you if you met the match requirement. But the Ray grant, the match requirement was 30%. If I change any numbers and I go below the 30%, it will tell me. Now, I'm the kind of person that I build it out. I do work up front. So for this budget, I put in a lot of information. For instance, the work plan, the different categories. I put in information to make sure if I change one thing, everything else is going to change. So for instance, right now it's saying we meet the match requirement of 30%. I'm just going to change one number over here. I know it looks a little intimidating, but let me change one number. No longer meet the match percent. So I try to build out things to make sure, you know, any kind of tools that I have to make sure if one thing changes, I'm going to know that I now no longer meet the match requirement. So I'm automatically going to just be disqualified from this grant. So like I said, I try to make sure, I think you should make sure that whatever you do, you need to follow through and make sure that everything ties together. And also when I was doing this, I found that this was a lot. So I also did a match checklist to make sure so that maybe it makes it easier. All right, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is kind of a checklist. I think makes it a little easier. It's not as much, it's not as intimidating, at least for me, to kind of go through and ask yourself if you've met these requirements, it's going to make it easier to make sure that you meet the match goals. Okay, and at this point, we're going to need questions or answers. I have if you could just put in the chat, wanted to know which of the following is required for a cost to be counted as match? A, it supports an approved work plan task. B, it is non-federal. C, is incurred during the approved project period. D, is properly documented. Or E, all of the above. Again, if you could just put in the chat, I'd appreciate it. Which of the following is required for a cost to be counted as match? A, it supports an approved work plan task. B, it is non-federal. C, it is incurred during the approved project period. D, it is properly documented. E, all of the above.
Looks like we're getting E, all of the above.
Good. That's the correct answer. Thank you. Just want to make sure you're understanding. And all of the above is very important. If you follow those, you should be good with your match. So at this point, if we have any additional questions or just things that we want to discuss or.
Yes, it looks like we have a hand raised. Shanice, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Thank you. Yes, Shanice, Professional London. I have a quick question. I apologize. I joined a little late, so you may have covered this. But when we have matching cash funds, does that money need to be separated into another account if it's being utilized as a match for this grant, or can it remain in our general funding account, knowing that we'll be using it as a match for the grant?
It can remain in the general account, but you need to make sure you use it in your general ledger. You need to make sure you split out in the general ledger, right? I mean, I don't know if you're an accounting person, but you need to have a different code for match money. It don't code it the same as you would the federal funds.
Yes, so we would set up, our accountant would set up a code specifically for this grant, and then any expenses that are connected to the grant will be matched to that code. But I was just wondering if we needed to separate it out. We don't need to,
No.
just as it's coded for the grant.
Just make sure you're coding it correctly. Just make sure it's coded correctly.
All right, thank you.
Melba, will we be able to share the tools, the match checklist with
Yes.
everyone who attended? Thank you. Okay, I don't think we have any other questions in the chat. I don't see any other hands raised. So I will turn it over to Kelly to let you guys know next steps.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. And thank you, Melba, for this training. I just wanted to ask if anybody or if any of you can fill out the survey that we have for this training. We would like to hear your thoughts about how the training went, and your response to our survey will help us cater to future trainings to your needs. And it'll take just 3 to 5 minutes, so I'll just send it in the chat right now. And yeah, please feel free to ask or sorry, not ask, feel free to fill it out and let us know how we did and how we can cater to any future needs that you may have in your organization or your group.
Thank you, Kelly. So we will be sending out the recording, the slides and the tools that Melba shared. If you guys have any questions, please feel to reach out to Kelly, Shahala, and I, and we'll make sure that you have whatever you need to be successful in your grant program. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you for allowing me to share.
Have a good day,
Everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. We're gonna be sending that information, all the information out to everyone who attended. So, or yeah, everyone, yeah. So we'll be sending that. No problem. Bye. Bye. Bye, Marvin.